welcome at Cape Girardeau's airport today as she brings the race for the White House to Southeast Missouri.
The campaign countdown is in full swing, and the Republicans hope visits like this and Mrs. Bush's popularity will help sway voters to vote for her husband.
How would I characterize the campaign at this point? We're going up. We're just right, just where we want to be, going right on up.
So Mrs. Bush is happy with the campaign and the way it's going thus far, and the folks here really did seem to appreciate her visit. But then again, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or none of the above, a chance to get to meet a First Lady is always a thrill. And
Susanna, perhaps more than in any year past. The First Lady of the United States travels to the heartland in an effort to bolster the re-election bid of her husband. Good evening. Barbara Bush arrived in Cape Girardeau this afternoon where she toured the SEMO District Fair. There she spoke with senior citizens and 2 youth clubs. Gwen Ellis joins us now with a live report. Gwen.
Marianne, the crowds out here just love Mrs. Bush. She joked with them often, even about the president doing the dishes. But she's obviously here for a very serious reason, to boost her husband's support in the heartland. The people we talked with said her visit may not change their minds come Election Day, but it sure was nice to have her here. Mrs. Barbara Bush was called the fairest lady of all as she visited the SEMO District Fair. First, she answered questions from senior citizens in the R&R tent.
What are you going to do for the senior citizens? Under Reagan Bush, the Social Security system has been stabilized and strengthened, and it is sacred.
She also talked about literacy, family values, and later, jobs.
Peace is not, it's not cheap, sad to say. Bases closed, plants have to readjust and get out of the defense business. Things are coming back. The thing the president has done is he's opened markets abroad.
Then Mrs. Bush crossed the fairgrounds in a tram as supporters lined the streets. She presented ribbons for livestock at the show arena. There, she mentioned what the president is doing for farmers.
Our exports are up 39%, and that's a large part of the economy.
Much of the audience was thrilled to see Mrs. Bush.
I just love her. I do. She's America's First Lady.
But those undecided about the election say they're still undecided.
I don't like the way the country, the economy is exactly, and I don't like Clinton.
Of course, even Mrs. Bush's handlers don't expect her to...
Public figures that even political opponents speak of with fondness.
I think it's fine for Miss Bush to come see the Southeast Missouri Fair. I mean, it's a real honor.
But how much political good does a visit like this do?
It's, you know, primarily...
In this election year.
Her visit to the Southeast Missouri District Fair got good reviews from all fairgoers questioned. And with more on the visit, here's Gwen Ellis.
Mrs. Barbara Bush is jetting around the Midwest trying to land support for the president. She spent about 1 hour at the SEMO District Fair, first with senior citizens at the R&R tent, talking about literacy and family values.
All statistics show that children who are read to, who are talked to, do much better in school.
Mrs. Bush also answered some questions about Social Security, but she deflected some others.
You know, you really ought to ask the president that question, because I'm not sure I know the answer.
Then the First Lady crossed the fairgrounds to present livestock awards at the show arena. There, she told the audience the president is helping farmers by encouraging beef sales in Japan.
Our exports are up 39%, and that's a large part of the economy.
She also said the free trade agreement will help bring new jobs to the area. The audience liked Mrs. Bush, but does her visit win voters?
Oh, I don't think it hurt anything. No.
That's the reason Mrs. Bush has campaigned in 7 states and 11 cities in the past few weeks. When asked whether the president will visit here, Mrs. Bush said she's been too busy to ask. In Cape Girardeau, Gwen Ellis, Heartland News.
They stay in school, they just do a much better job. So if you want to strengthen families, strengthen your literacy. I really believe that very, very strongly.
Mrs. Bush's entourage then moved to the livestock arena to give awards to FFA and 4-H members, and she had a word for farmers.
I think the farmers ought to look long and hard at George Bush and then vote for him. You all will think hard and consider carefully and vote for George Bush in the fall. Thank you very, very much.
President Bush's visit
to be in Paducah. You should have seen it flying in with these fall colors. It makes you agree with the guy who said, heaven is a Kentucky kind of place.
With those words, the President of the United States draws cheers from the large crowd that gathered in Paducah today for his visit. Good evening, everybody. I'm Ron Beaton.
And I'm Kim Keeler. For the first time ever, a sitting president visited the city, and thousands turned out to see him. Time ever, a sitting president from each of those officials. The Clinton representative said she found it a bit offensive that she caught Mr. Bush looking at his watch during the town forum. She thought that was a bad indication that that he wasn't paying attention. And she also thought it was bad that he stumbled over saying Western Kentucky during the opening rally at PCC. Now, yeah,
you head through a lot of geographical areas, and you can get mixed up easily.
Sure, and the Perot representative said Bush's appearance today should lean to the fact that a vote for Perot is not a wasted vote. So those are their comments.
And that's a key battle that the Perot camp is fighting. It is not a wasted vote.
That's right.
Well, we have much more to come still on our special edition of the 6 o'clock news beat. More coverage of the president's visit to Paducah,
including details on his speech at PCC.
And tear into opponent Bill Clinton at the rally in Paducah today at PCC. The crowd count was based on the number of people who passed through 7 metal detectors. Ernie Mitchell has our story.
The crowd, much larger than expected, had been waiting for hours. The cheering grew when, right on time, the first of the Marine helicopters appeared in the sky. The president had a little help on this trip from Gerald McRaney, star of the TV series Major Dad.
Governor Clinton has said that he wants to do for the United States what he has done to the state of Arkansas. Well, I can see that you're in agreement with me. I don't take well to threats of that nature.
Despite the polls, the president spoke words of confidence.
Here we come down to the wire with 7 days to go. It's like a close race at Bluegrass Downs, and we're closing the gap. And in 7 days, we are pulling ahead at the finish line to win this election.
He cited figures trying to show that the nation's economy is well on the way back.
The figures came out refuting the Clinton-Gore claim of how bad everything is. The figures came out for growth in the third quarter, and the economy of the United States led Europe, led Canada, led Japan, and we grew at 2.7%.
There were a few Clinton-Gore signs seen in the crowd, but the people who held them up were not convinced.
My biggest problem is my father works overseas, and he has for 2 years, because he can't find a job over here, and that's what I'm against.
Bush Quayle campaign officials know that the polls indicate a lead for Clinton in this area, but they say they suspect some of that margin is soft. In 1 week, we'll know whether one presidential visit shifted much of it. With photographers Mike Spissinger and H.D. Williams, Ernie Mitchell, Newsbeat 6.
About 10,000 people crowded into Paducah Community College for today's rally. Now, of that number, not all were pleased with how they were treated at the rally. Some Clinton and Perot supporters claimed officials took their signs from them and tore them up. They say that infringes on their freedom of expression.
Nobody seems to want to hear it. They take our signs from us and funnel us out and tell us they're going to make us leave unless we give them our signs. I don't think that's fair. I think that's unjust.
I had no stick on my sign. They didn't even, I had 2 strings tied in to hold it over my shoulder. No signs, no staples, or nothing.
So you're not real happy about this, are you?
I am not. I think it's taking our rights away from us.
They didn't forcibly take it away from me, but they said, you will give it to me right now. It was somebody that had Bush stickers all over them and pins all over them.
I had like 15 Clinton Gore signs in my arm. The guy all of a sudden just rips them out from behind me. I didn't know where he came from. Turning around, he like grabbed my arm. I still had 2 left. And he said, I suggest you pick these signs up and carry them back out to your car. We ain't allowing any Clinton Gore sign or supporters in here.
Now, officials at the entrance gates to the rallies say they only took signs on stalks and those with hard edges that posed a danger. But they upset a lot of people by doing that, sounds like.
I guess in fairness, I ought to point out, I had one caller, telephone caller, that said they saw them taking away some bush quail signs also. Now, that's what that particular caller said.
I was told the same thing, yeah.
So it's hard to, can't please everybody, obviously, especially on a political story like this. Right. Well, Cal joins us now. And
supporters.
Now, some of you call letting us know that you disagree with that decision, so we thought we would give the station management a chance to explain why that decision was made. For that, joining us now, News Director Terry Reeves.
Thank you, Ron and Kim. We've been listening to you today. Many of you have called, and understandably upset at times, I suppose, because perhaps your child or perhaps you were at some place where you couldn't see the entire length of the president's campaign speech at the PCC grounds today. Well, we want to try to clear up a few things. We may be wrong and may be right in your eyes, but it was a decision we had to make, and here are a few thoughts on it. First of all, the campaign, nor the White House paid for the time. It wasn't a paid political announcement, so to speak. Therefore, we covered it like any other news event, and often that calls for discretion. We covered the arrival, the beginning of his speech, and then, of course, his departure here to our studios, where there was a very informative town hall meeting. Basically, nothing was said at PCC that hasn't been said before in the campaign, and there certainly were no local announcements of importance. And, of course, we would have immediately gone back to the coverage had there been anything of major local interest. And this is not to sound disrespectful to the President of the United States. We were all just as excited and honored as perhaps many of you were about his visit to this area. But the purpose of our coverage today was to be informative and not be a tool of the campaign. I would refer back to 1988 when President Reagan made not one but two stops to this area. In July, he came as an official visitor to tour the drought damage in southern Illinois. 2 months to the day later, he came back to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and when he did, we did the same thing that day. We covered some of his hello to the area and then cut away because the speech was very partisan. That's our reasoning, and we thank all of you for calling and voicing your concern, and we're listening.
All right. Thank you, Terry.
November 3rd will tell the story if the president's 3 hours on the bluegrass will keep him in the White House. With photographer Jim Etheridge, Stephanie Summers, Newsbeat 6.
Well, after the president left our studios today, the motorcade returned him to the PCC campus, where security remained quite tight. About 100 people had stayed around during the TV broadcast to watch the president depart. It didn't take long. He waved from the steps of Marine One to the small crowd, and within just about a minute, the helicopter was airborne, returning to Fort Campbell's Army Airfield, where Air Force One had landed earlier in the day. Later this evening, Mr. Bush was campaigning in Dayton, Ohio.
Car wash. Owner Drew Walker says he was surprised when the president's cars pulled in and the drivers asked if it would be all right to run them through. Now, Walker not only let them run the cars through, he also waxed, polished, armor-alled the tires, and vacuumed the insides of the cars. Walker says the cars were pretty clean to begin with, no gum wrappers or soda cans on the floor. And in case you were wondering, they washed the cars for free.
A little gift to their country there,
I guess so. Still ahead, we'll see what else